Or for me.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, we are live. Good evening, everyone. We have expect Olivia Schmidt to join momentarily from the Integrity Group, and Mr. Zimmerman is joining us as well. So just with the way the schedule worked, it seems like it's been a while since we've had one of these. I think the holiday got us. I think the Labor Day holiday got us. So anyway, though, I know our main conversation tonight is following up from the commission meeting at the end of August, where we presented the different options. I know I emailed those about half an hour ago. Nothing has changed. I just wanted y'all to have those available at the top of your inbox if needed. Nope, now we got Brian Granger coming in. Yep. And so so that's kind of our option tonight. Again, we're just waiting on Ms. Schmidt to join. Mr. Mount, if there's anything else you want to talk as we wait a few minutes on her to jump on board.
I mean, Brian has a lovely shirt on today. Very festive, very colorful.
All right. Nevin is going in and coming out repeatedly. So,
Josh has a tie on.
Josh looks very nice. He's muted as well.
I dressed up just for you guys.
Thank you.
Your tie's a little off there, Josh. You straighten it up now if you go. Tighten it up.
Business time. That's what that means. Got to loosen up the tie.
There you go.
all right. Let's see if this third time is a charm for Mr. Zimmerman. So.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, somehow you're in the meeting twice, Nevin. So
Really? Huh. I don't know. I
Okay.
tried, but just bear with me.
okay, there you go. Now you're only in there once. So whichever one you're on, we can still hear you. So I think if you turn your camera on, you'll be good.
Well, every time I turn it on, I get kicked out. Let me try it one more time.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
All right, and there we go. And we have Olivia has joined us from the Integrity Group as well. So we have the options, and I'm happy to share those, Mr. Mayor, or on the screen. But I know that was a lot of information that was presented at the commission meeting, and so. But we are really at a decision point. And so, there are some, I don't know, that will go, there we go. So we are at a decision point on moving forward with one of these options to really determine, basically at the end of the day, what do we do with the approximately $5 million that we have. And so, if it's helpful, I can have Olivia just kind of go through kind of the three options again, and then have a time of discussion. Or if you guys just want to jump right into discussion, would that be helpful? Okay. Olivia, I saw you jump in. I don't know. I'm sharing my screen, so I think everybody can see it.
Josh is raising his hand as well. If Josh wants to kick the discussion off.
Okay. Well, I mean, I was just going to go through them again real quick. Yeah. Okay. That's what you'd asked for. All right. So Olivia, if you want to go ahead and kind of run us through the three options, and kind of, what, kind of where we are in the decision, and just real quickly for a few minutes, I think that'd be good. Ma'am, is your microphone working?
Yes, sir. I think so.
Great.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I also went through and did some other options. I don't know if we want to get into all that, but just in case someone had a question or other ideas, that I went through and did all the math on every alliteration of the possibilities of things that we could possibly do. But I don't want to make the water muddier than it is if we don't need to. So currently what we have right now is the Martin Theater projects in options 1 and 2 being funded at $35 million, with projects, the actual Martin Theater project and the Marina project, the Panama City Marina project. So that gives you $35 million. From what the information I received today, we're looking at trying to reduce that scope of work. So that $35 million may be a little bit high for you. at this point, and that leaves the 4.9 million available for whatever project you decide to do. It says non-marina here. I think we've kind of come to the conclusion that it would be a marina project. So based on what type of project is, it would allow for the HMP, which is included in option 2. So basically option 2 is exactly the same, except for we're calling it a marina project and we are operating under the assumption that you will utilize the scope of work of the hazard mitigation. That being said, it's very specific and it may not be cost effective to utilize the HMP. So a really good round number to just hold on to is the 4.989. That's 100% there, will always be available, marina, non-marina, no matter what. If there's a possibility potentially to go up to the 5.1, but like I said, it could end up costing you well over the $117,000 that you currently have in your HMP scope of work. So that's options 1 and 2 for the most part. Options 3 is really the one where we kind of took a turn and underfunded the Martin Theater at the $27,452. And the 27.5, basically, we'll call it that, and then leaves you, on here it says bulkhead project, but obviously it could be used for anything that you want it to be used for regarding the scope of work, and that puts the 13 million, almost 13.1 at an additional project. I also went through and combined, and I'm just going to say this really quickly, but I combined 2295 and 2202 just to see what the math would be based on what you anticipate your reduction being. That brings you down to about 26 million, 26.7, roughly, just under, for Martin Theater, and leaves you about 13.8 for the PC Marina or whatever marina project you decide to use. Alternatively, if you wanted to focus on funding the marina, you could put projects 2221, 2295, and 1971 together and grossly underfund the Martin Theater at 18 million and fund the marina at the 22 million for 2202. So there are other options, obviously, or you could switch that and put 22 million towards Martin Theater and have 18 for the marina. So there's other options that are not alliterated here. But for the sake of the argument and the discussion, you guys should probably start and see where we land. But there are other potential possibilities for combining stuff in different ways.
Olivia, are there big questions that the commission needs to answer to kind of help drive what direction, what option they consider?
Well, so really and truly, the missing piece of information for me the other day was what are all the costs of these other potential projects? Because if our driving force is to mitigate how much money we send back to FEMA and also keep our long-term debt as low as possible, having the estimated dollar amount of all of those projects would give us a better idea. So if it, for the upland and the sidewalks and the railings and all of that, is roughly a $5 million project or $7 million project, that would be helpful to know. If the store and the boat dock is 15 million, that would be helpful to know, because once we have a set number of projects, there's only so many ways we can put these together. So if we know what the estimated cost of all these different projects are, then we can input those projects and say, well, we have 17 million here. If we use the 13.8 or the 13 million on that, that's going to leave us an long-term debt of 4 million, but it reduces it over here. So what, you know what I'm saying? Like, to have all the information, we would need the actual estimated cost of those projects to decide which one is most cost effective and which choice gets us closer to our dollar amount. If that makes any sense.
It does. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing and whoops, wrong one. Sorry. Stop share. All right. I see. That's a kind of a different order there. So we can just go in order. We got Alan, Josh. Well, Robbie dropped off. Alan or Robbie, or Alan or Josh, one of y'all want to jump in there?
Josh goes first. He has hand up.
Okay. There we go. It's shuffling around on y'all.
All right. So, I think I appreciate the extra time to kind of process because that was very helpful. It allowed us to kind of get a visual on where we stand on the Martin Theater, kind of look at a different, what alternatives that are kind of there and look at the funding overall. And that was kind of what I sent everybody was basically my summary. I'm not saying it's the right decision, but what I do want to recognize is we're at in the Martin Theater project at kind of a critical juncture. And so we've already encountered significant change orders. And the more that we continue opening up, we have the chance at more with the addition of this tariff increase that's now eating into the project amount as well. There were some deductive change orders that were in the original contract. If we don't want to see that project escalate beyond what we've already committed and potentially beyond what we commit more, then now would be a good time to do a good evaluation on whether or not the Ritz is a core part of the project that we'd like to see completed right now. That doesn't mean that we abandon the Ritz. What that means is, and I've done this several times in other projects that end up in the same spot. This is not something that's out of the ordinary, specifically when you're working with older buildings. You basically get it to the shutter point. Now, some will say the shutter point is drywall. That is not the case. Like you could leave dirt where it is. You could go and just put the steel structure up. You could finish off where the stairwell is and the loading dock. There's a lot of different options that allow you to save more than just a few sheets of drywall. But if we do look at that, what it opens up an opportunity to potentially give more to the downtown marina and actually backfill more than what we anticipated. Now, do I think good? I think a good option is we can put $5 million towards that. But that also leaves us with the Martin Theater continuing to grow and expand in its overall cost. And it is definitely one of the most talked about projects that we have. And the question is, do we want it to get more expensive than it already is? And I think my answer is pretty clear with what I sent you guys is I would like that not to happen. And in order to do that, the contractor is a part of that conversation, but they are not the driver by that conversation. And so what that means is we look at what we want to accomplish and then we communicate, hey, this is what you had in your deductive change orders. This is what we want you to see you complete. And this is what we're okay with. My concern with the Martin specifically, if we continue down this same path, is we could end up sacrificing in the later points of the project, things that make it truly unique. So we might find ourselves cutting out, acoustic panels, cutting out, specific lighting, cutting out things that are kind of critical to having a Martin Theater that's fully functional, and we may end up with just a box. That is my thought based upon my walkthrough. I know everybody else got to. I'm sure everybody else has got a lot of thoughts. But where I'm kind of at in this mix is I'd like to see us pull back on the Martin Theater, but then go lean more heavily into the downtown marina with what funding that we can put there that lessens the burden on both partnerships and allows us to kind of keep driving forward with completing all projects. I don't think any of us anticipated we'd be talking about as much uplands improvement in the conversation to get the slips built as what we have been. And so this could be a mix to kind of help mitigate some of that, as well as just get it finished and maximize the FEMA fundings. The only thing I'll add to that conversation, which I alluded to, Keith did express when we were doing our walkthrough, there may be some savings in MLK funding that comes available at the end of the project. And if so, because those are 428 money, that could come to backfill any shortage that we have in the Martin Theater. So anyway, I know that's a lot. That's why I wanted to send it in advance, but I appreciate the additional time to kind of look at everything, walk the facility, understand the challenges that exist with the tariffs, unknown conditions, so on and so forth. But I think it's a surety if we continue down the same path we're in right now, that project is going to swell, maybe even beyond the margin that is being communicated here. So shrinking it will also help mitigate our risk of it going grossly over budget.
All right, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I just got done with a tour myself of the Martin Theater, and I guess I don't really have a full picture of, Jared, you mentioned, and Keith was there, that it's 70% already purchased, meaning a lot of the equipment's been purchased and things have already been purchased in advance. And so there's not a lot of wiggle room in the cost if we head towards the same goal.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you're good. You're
Well,
fine. Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say I don't feel like kind of adding to Josh's point of we, the elected officials, don't really know what our options are with the Martin Theater. We're kind of throwing darts saying, hey, here's kind of what we're willing to talk about, pulling back on tile, shuttering part of it. None of us want to see the project shuttered. I mean, we'd love to see all these projects happen and happen fully funded. But we don't because we're not on the construction team, nor do we have a list of things that have been purchased or haven't. I talked about, even as simple as the catering kitchen. Like there's this catering kitchen that has like warming drawers and equipment, stub it out and let the caterer or the management company build the offices in the back. Now we don't magically find millions of dollars when you do that, but the offices might need to be 3 small offices or 1 big one. We don't really know. Let the management company build out their own offices. And so I would love to see staff come back to us with, hey, here's what we could do with the Martin Theater. Here are options we could easily do. Here's ones we really, really, really don't want to do. But at least as someone who gets to vote on how the spending happens, we at least know what our options are. Right now, it seems foggy at best that we understand the situation. We as elected officials.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
just from conversations you guys, and I want to kind of answer some of the stuff you've just said there. So from some of the conversations we've had with all 5 of you, you're right, Alan, the contract and all the material, like we're 70% purchased. So 70% of the contracted items in the current scope of work have been purchased. So in order to accomplish what Commissioner Street and what I hear you getting after would be, we would need to sit down with the contractor, figure out what's not purchased yet and what that impact is, and if the commission's got an appetite to not do those things. And when I say that, like the warming kitchen may already be purchased, and so can we send it back? Is there a restock fee? Is that something we're willing to look at? But like the furniture's not all purchased yet. So that's kind of what to more fully explain that. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and adding that, we keep using the word FEMA funded for the Martin Theater, but really it's Marina funded because we're moving money from the Marina to the Martin Theater is the way I look at it. My priorities, as I mentioned on the Marina, are side promenade around it, railing, any sort of infrastructure we need, MEPs, whatever, to get the water sewer out to the ship store, those sort of things, sort of getting it pad ready for a potential marina partner and or Uplands Leasing. And Uplands Leasing, including, we may look at the situation and say, all right, CMP, here's what we're willing to allow you to do a trade of, here's a couple pads on the marina, or we land lease to make up potential debt that we have, and we land lease the land to pay off the debt that we're accruing. I'm willing to do both. So those are my thoughts.
All right, Robbie, and then back to Commissioner Street. You're muted, Mr. Hughes.
My bad. There's a lot there. Let me make sure that I'm right with something. If we were to take the $5 million and put it at the marina and leave everything else the same, we'll have a paid for MLK Center. We'll have a paid for Martin Theater. We'll have 2 marinas with 50 slips. And the 200 slips, they've already started the permit for the other 200. And we have everything paid for, and we put no money into either marina other than the bulkhead that the last commission voted on. Tell me how that's a bad idea. Because so far, all the suggestion is, and Commissioner Street, I will use last week as well, you introduced getting some debt for the Panama Grammar, and now introducing $13 million worth of debt. And the reason that the Martin works is because it has no debt. The reason that that's okay on the marina is because we have no debt service. And I'm really confused as to why now that's a conversation, because we need docks, and we can start docks by the, if we were to vote today, we can have them by the end of the year. So that's my first thought. And that is, it concerns me that we get this close and then we don't vote. And I'd like to really make sure that when we get to next Tuesday, that we're trying to walk out of there with a plan. Remember, whatever we vote on and get executed has to go to St. Joe, and we need to get them on the clock too, because we got to see what's going to happen. As far as the 13 million going back over there, the benefit is, and I was at that meeting, that money, all that FEMA money went over there because we had already started conversations with then SAMP and now CMP, and we weren't going to have to put any money into it. So there was a trade-off there. It wasn't like we took it away and didn't have a mechanism to fund it. If we didn't have anybody, I would be very concerned. But we got local people trying to develop a marina that we own, will always own, have money coming into us, and we can't come up with yes just to build a dock. That concerns me. Why is it that now is a good time to create debt service? And Josh and Brian and Janice, y'all did a really good vote on that, because there's no way that the Martin Theater is going to make money to service $13 million. Okay. And I would say again, building that like you're talking about, let's build a half a football field. It doesn't make sense. And the vendors are very excited that that's coming, because it's going to give them more people down there. And what you're talking about shuttering, that's the profit center of the Martin Theater. Those are where we're going to make some money. So I'm open to, if somebody can come up with a better idea than what we have set up, where it's not costing us a dime, I'm all ears. But right now, I'm really that's where I'm standing, is that we go with put the $5 million down there and leave everything else the same. We got paid for properties.
Can I want to just, my apologies, Josh. My comments related to Martin Theater were about stopping potential change of orders, work orders.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that was I'm agreeing with what you're saying, but I'm also trying to prevent Martin Theater escalations of cost.
Okay, real quick then. We know that when I tore my house apart, I had change orders. I don't know what Josh, do you know what the change orders are? Because you had talked about their swelling cost. I mean, if we know it's going to be $5 million, that's one thing. But if it's $1 million or $1.5 million on a $32 million deal, in the grand scheme of things, yes, that's more money. But do we know? I mean, I've seen you doing that, but do we know? And I'll ask and shut up.
So I want Jared to clarify something, because I think this will kind of give a good picture of what we're encountering with the Martin Theater. Jared, you said that 70% of the materials are purchased, but we have yet to see a tariff change order come from those 70% of materials. So I'm curious if you could clarify that, and then I'll finish answering Robbie's question, because if we truly are 70% purchased, I'm very concerned at the fact that we didn't have a conversation on the tariff change orders before we got to the 70%.
Keith, I'm gonna defer to Keith on this, but it's my understanding, and this is what Mitch on the job site with Alan said today. We are 70% purchased on our contracts. So explain to me then how we can be sitting with a change order that's coming for tariffs when we haven't approved that yet, and they're 70% purchase. So again, I'm just asking for clarity. Yeah. So it's not just for tariffs. It's for a variety of things. Our construction management consultant is still working through to say, hey, these are valid. These are invalid. This is a deductive. Yes, this is an additive. And they're getting to that number. We think it's, anywhere between 800 to 1.2, that we do believe that
an additional one. This is the second one now that we've gotten.
So you're correct. So the first one was all FEMA eligible scope of work and is fully reimbursed. I know
it's still a change order.
I agree. I'm just gonna finish the question you asked me. So yes, we're 70% contracted for all contracts. That includes MEP, lighting, everything that's in the scope of work for Burke to do. I will say that tariffs have only come up with the elevator so far, to my knowledge. That there is exposure in this project that's going to go 18 more months, that tariffs could be a reality. Yes. We did walk each one of you through there and said, hey, furniture and seating has not been purchased yet. We did an analysis, 6-8 months ago, that we could purchase it today and lock ourselves in from potential cost escalations, but to store those in a climate controlled facility is $80,000 annually. So those are the types of things that we're looking at, but it's not just any one item that this next round of change order is considered. There's multiple things in there to include ripping out concrete to make floor level on the front side because terrazzo floor is going in there. Is
the coming change order, is that reimbursable?
I'm sorry?
The coming change order, is that reimbursable like the last one?
I would say upwards of 90%. Yes, it is. And there is existing as it sits today, how the donor projects sit on a Martin Theater, there's existing donor project room to absorb those. So
and the problem with the way that this is being framed that I find very, I'm just going to say this, if it is 70% contractually obligated, it wouldn't take 18 more months to finish. Like I would argue that is not a reality unless somebody can show me that we've spent 70% of what is required on this project. I don't know why we're even saying 70% because I know that's not true. We all just walked it.
Josh, I'm going to let Keith explain, but the contractor is buying all his subs out. That's what that means.
So typically in a project of this magnitude, very customary, the contractor on a general contractor, when they have this situation, they will go in and buy down that contract and get negotiated with all their subs right up front. And for anything and everything they can possibly buy, they go ahead and contract them and obligate their subcontractors so that the prices are fixed and they don't get hit with some of these situations. For instance, MLK Rec Center, we've had the computers on hand for nearly 9 months, 10 months. We've had the chairs for the STEM Center. We've had those in our possessions, stored and insured for the last 10 months because we didn't want to take chances on those items not being available. So a lot of these things in fact, we should be more like 90 to 100% bought out on this contract. And Bert will tell you that they would rather be 100% bought out on this contract, but they're not there yet. Part of those reasons because they have RFIs out and they're still trying to evaluate some of those situations with DAG, with ourselves. We're all working through some of those situations, but it is very common to have that contracted out, to have all those contracts in place at this point.
Then what I would say, it is pivotal to talk about at this point in time. So right now, between what you just said, we've now seen a cost escalation of approaching $2 million on this specific project. And we're only about, what was it? I think I got 20-something% done is what we are to date from our walkthrough, I think is what it was. So what I'm trying to draw attention to, I think Alan said the same thing, is if we're already at 2 million, and we're sitting here at this point in time, like what always happens on a project like this is your last section of it ends up being where you make all your cuts after all this stuff is contractually obligated, after you don't have any flexibility to adjust anything. And then you're sitting with a spot of like, oh, you know what? We can't put chairs in the theater because we ran out of money. You know, like that's the stuff that I'm trying to avoid. Yes, there could be an auxiliary benefit to the marina, but the further we continue to go on this planned course, the more exposure we have to change orders. And we've gotten hit with some very significant ones in a very short amount of time. And it's got my concern of not only on the tariffs, but on what's going to be exposed when we open up the wall between the Ritz and the Martin Theater. What possibly change order could come with the steel? How much will the concrete escalate by the end of it? I mean, there's 1,000 things that you can put into it that are exposed right now. And if I was operating this project with my own personal money and I was doing this is the point in time I'd be hitting pause and I'd say, bring me back some options that I can cost contain because it looks like I'm going to get more change orders and I don't want to run out of money. So that's what I would be saying.
So, Commissioner, if I may, real quick, a couple of things. One, we all agree. When I say we, I'm talking about city staff, contractor, DAG, we all agree that we feel like we're probably 75% or more, right in that range, complete with change orders or expectations. We're past that threshold. We've stated that. And I want to be very clear, because when I read what you had sent out to all of us, I got a different feeling. I mean that respectfully. We are further beyond that point. If you look at this as an onion, as we all talk about, we feel like we're mostly at the core of the onion. Could I sit here and tell you, to your question you asked the other day, what are some of the unknowns that we still have ahead of us? If we knew, they wouldn't be an unknown, right? I mean, so at the point of that would be, we think there could potentially be some different things as we start putting the puzzle back together, but not a ton of those, because the things that would happen would be the items that we haven't quite purchased yet. What would those cost increases look like? So cost from 2 years ago to now. Could be also some changes about maybe something fundamentally doesn't connect or attach. That item is no longer available. And so we have to make a couple modifications. But right now, I anticipate, quite honestly, and this is me putting it out here to you guys, I think we'll be no greater than a 10% overage on a project of this magnitude. To me, 10% on a project this complicated, to me, if you'd have told me, and I was very vocal about this from the beginning with my construction experience on renovations of this magnitude, historic renovations, 10% is probably light. You would expect 15 to 20% on a project like this. And I currently think we're probably going to be somewhere in the 10% range, which I think is extremely reasonable and extremely fair on a project of 3 buildings coming together as one. And that's where I'm stuck with it. And I feel very confident of that. And I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. And it's backed up by DAG as well as Burke, that we all feel that direction. We spent a ton of time in this interim part, this upfront part, really working to solve some of these issues before they really become issues and fix some of those. And we spend a lot of time doing that. And I want you guys to know that we have truly rolled up our sleeves to try to solve those problems well in advance before they come to you. And there's places, as we met with the mayor today, there's absolutely places that we, as city staff and contractor and DAG, probably should be quicker to you guys to say, hey, listen, and I apologize. I take responsibility.
I want to be very clear with something. What's got me very concerned is the fact that there's a $1 million+ change order that I don't even know what's in it, like yet. Like that, and some of the work's been done. That has to stop, guys. Like, you can't continue forward with a project with that. That's what you're. Wait. If I'm misunderstanding something, but
very a small amount of that 1.2 has already been complete. It's what we're saying. It's upcoming, and we are still. Keep in mind, sometimes you'll see a positive change order. It's a projected change order. Potential change orders, why it's called a PCO. So we may bring that to you, and we still may solve that issue. To be fully transparent, 100%, we have this problem because of this magnitude of this project is much different than the new build at MOK. But I'll give you a great example. Had I come to you at every single stage of MOK too quickly, you guys may have had some of the same panic, but a lot of it got adjusted before it got back to you, because you can solve some of these issues before they become permanent change orders. And so just because we see them, it's just the approval to continue that process. You may not see the credit yet. There are cases where that goes on. And to Jared's point earlier, he's exactly right. Most of everything we've tracked so far has been 90% FEMA. I agree. That's still a change order. I respectfully 100% understand where you're at, but it's 90% FEMA and roughly 10% or less and city funds that we are putting up. So I acknowledge that. But a lot of these, we've got to put them out in front of you guys. But I would say of the $1 million of change orders that are out there right now, as far as work that's been completed on that, maybe it's 15 or 20% of that at this very moment. But it's stuff that we all agree needs to happen. So to me, it's kind of irrelevant. But to your point, we've not backed you in the corner and said, you have to make this decision. And I think that's where you're probably upset. And I think talking to Mayor Branch earlier, he would also agree with that. And I can respect that. That's not what any of us want to do. None of us want to paint you into a corner to say, hey, we've done all this, and guess what? You don't really have a say in it any longer. We'd never want to put you in that
No,
situation.
absolutely not.
Well, if that's the case, then what I would suggest is bringing us options with what will reduce the cost rather than just bringing us options that escalate the cost. And that's not what I've seen thus far. And so if you're going to bring a change order, bring a way for us to keep the cost contained at the same time. That's what I would say. And I'm glad to hear that that full amount isn't already expended because, yeah, I do plan on reviewing it. And, I get that you guys all agree, but we also have we have the fiduciary responsibility, and that's what we're here for. Nobody else is ultimately stamping their name on the line as far as what these expenditures are, except the 5 people that are talking to you right now. And I want to make sure that everybody understands until we vote. Like, that is not, it's not okay to proceed forward until we're on the same page.
There are, and I do understand that, Commissioner, there are some items that if we were to say, hey, contractor, that's 10 more bags of bricks, like, do not do another dime worth of work until we call an emergency meeting. I'm just saying that because there are going to be items that they have to do for either a structural concern or, hey, what the pipe right here is 6 inches over this way, and we're going to have this small order of magnitude things, and those things will add up. But like to say, hey, I've got to shut the job site down, then we'll be into damages with the contractor. So I just
That's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for things when I see $500,000, when I see $1 million. Like, those are the things I don't want to feel like I'm backed into a corner to have to approve because all 3 parties are in an agreement. Well, hey, like, you would think that, like, that was the first walkthrough I've done of of Martin since we started this. And part of the reason why it's coming into focus is because we are seeing change orders. And, Keith, I mean, I know you're not going to be here through the end of it, but I certainly hope that 10% is the number that it is. But there's truly, when I asked the question, nobody could tell me with any certainty because you don't know what you don't know. And that was what the contractor clearly said, including the architects. So to say it's 75%, that's worth as much as what we know, which we don't know what we don't know. So there's not really a way to determine what we're going to encounter other than encountering it. And all I was saying is there needs to be other options presented rather than just increasing the cost. And I get that that is the solution that is presented right now, but I think there should be other solutions provided too.
Sir,
So-
I know other.
Keith,
Yes, sir.
Keith, real quick. Right now is the cheapest it's ever going to be to remodel all 3 buildings, right? Because it's already open.
100%. I mean,
Okay.
100%. If you pause anything in any of those spaces and come back to them, it's only going to cost more money in the future.
Okay.
I mean, the cost of doing that later is not going to get any cheaper.
All right, Nevin. What lawsuit is available for them to file against us if we do this? We got a contract with them.
Yes, we do. I'm sorry to have to go, but I've got a funeral to do this evening, so I will be watching back a little later. Thank you guys for letting me stir it up for a second and then just drop.
Right.
So, I appreciate that. But I will listen back to everything for sure.
Real quick, Josh, you did bring up with your own money, you might think about stopping. You got one.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, are
And
you
I've encountered
stopping it too? Huh?
but we're problem solving. I mean, like, I think that's the piece. It's not just a blanket answer yes to the contractor. I'm not saying that's what staff does. I didn't see that in my review. I think they do provide challenges to it, but I would just like to see, when we're getting these options back on escalating the cost, what are we going to do to save money? And because it is money that's being taken away from the marina, the more that we continue down. And that's, there is possibility, and it sounds like there's going to be some that are coming out of local taxpayer dollars. And so I just think that there's another way to problem solve rather than cost increases. And that's
When the city has no cost of the marina, how is that money taken away when somebody else is building on our property and we benefit? To me, that's the hard part. Yes, there's money that can come in there, but they're willing to spend their own money to make the deal happen. Why do we want to confuse that?
Well, it sounds like we'll get into that conversation on Tuesday. So,
yes, we will. Yes, we will. Okay.
All right. Appreciate you guys.
Nevin, what about that lawsuit question?
But before you go there, you brought something up with your conversation with Commissioner Street, and I hate that he had to hop off, but staff is presenting those items and problem solving as we go. There's been hundreds of items that we've looked at in the process of this this construction project, from lighting to stage lifts to diva shells to, I mean, you name the scope of work list in that contract, and we have looked for like, kind, and less, not better. We've looked for a variety of things to continue to drive down costs, and staff is still committed to doing that. We're not out here looking for a hole to pour cement in just for the sake of that. And I do want to make sure that Keith, and now my team, along with our structural engineer at the city, Matt DeVito, and our public works director, Clint Murphy, we're going to continue to do that. It'll be all eyes on from staff standpoint on this project. And we're, and Mayor Branch, it was a thought that we had when we were talking to you is providing weekly updates on, or, periodic updates when conditions changes. So you guys are well ahead of being surprised. The last thing we want is you guys to be surprised and feel cornered at the dais and not have a way out. So
I asked Nevin just to hold tightly on the legal question because we jumped over Commissioner Granger, and Nevin said absolutely address Commissioner Granger, allow him, and then he'll answer the lawsuit question and the risk there. Commissioner Hughes, go ahead, Commissioner Granger.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
The question, Commissioner Hughes, is what is potential risk litigation if we go to Burke and say, okay, Burke would like to reduce either a particular item, which I think is what is being discussed here. We wouldn't finish the Ritz building under certain scenarios, either the bottom floor or the whole thing, or maybe we close it in somewhat. All of that, there's, I think, deductive alternates that are in the bid, but it's not, I don't believe it's going to be as simple as just doing a math equation and just reducing this deductive alternate, primarily because a lot of the work is already started and those alternates were accepted in the overall bid. So the bid was accepted to do the entire project. And so now I think it would be a negotiation, obviously, to come up with what that number would be to reduce the cost. So it's not just a math, we deduct $2 million. It is a negotiation to make sure that what's already been done, they would get paid for. We want to make sure that that if the work is actually reduced, that the profit's actually reduced too, along with the work and materials. So it's not impossible, but it would take the parties to come together to come up with a solution. And it's not unusual for parties on a project like this to get together to come up with problem solving if there's a need for the entire project, but it's not. It takes some time and working through.
All right. Commissioner Lucas put her hand up. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Just following up, Mr. Zimmerman, on the possibility of Burke being able to take us to court behind these kinds of changes that we're talking about now. What might that kind of scenario look like?
Well, there is, if for some reason, let's just set up a brinksmanship scenario. The city says, we're not going to finish the Ritz. We look here and we think that we have the unilateral right to deduct $2.1 million from the contract, and that means you won't do that work, whatever that is, but representing finishing out the Ritz. If Burke were to disagree, then they have remedies. I believe this contract calls for mediation first, so we'd go through a mediation process. Obviously, as you go through mediation or then maybe arbitration, no work is going on during that process, at least no work as it relates to whatever's in dispute. Hopefully the rest of the project could continue, but we just don't know. So if there was a dispute, there would be, I believe, the AIA contract we have, and it would call for mediation, then arbitration, then ultimately litigation.
So that would be the additional legal costs added.
Right.
To the
Right. And I did just confirm that it is litigation in court. It is not mediation or arbitration. So there'd be a direct lawsuit in court, and there would be additional time and cost.
Something else I would like to add real quick. I apologize. And I wish Commissioner Street was on here because I definitely wouldn't. He's going to watch it, he says. So I want to make sure he doesn't in any way think I'm, just picking back or saying something disrespectful to him in any way whatsoever. But a few things that he said that I want to reiterate. And I just think it's just a fundamental difference of what he heard and what we know from a daily. I mean, this has been my daily life for the last however long down there. So we do not agree that some of the things that he said. I mean, we do feel like we are around 75% past the point of all these unknowns. So we do not think there's substantial increases still standing out there necessarily. We're to the point where we're about to start putting things back together again. And so that just naturally, when you have the construction world, you just know that you're past some of those unknown territories that you had before. Does that mean there's not going to be some things that pop up? But as I said earlier, the other things I want to kind of talk about real quick to you is we can't just leave it dirt. We already sailed past that point when there's a lot of things that we did with this design. The ticket booth, the ticket booth is in the DIB building. Egress, we have fire safety, bringing everything up to code. There are 2 exits that have to go through that space that we already have. 2 elevators over there. One could potentially be, but we've already purchased it. So we'll own an elevator we don't get installed. So I just would share with you that there are some things, MEPs, we currently, all of it's been designed for all of those, the plumbing, the HVAC, the electrical, all of that is considered one facility at this point in time. To go back and redesign the costs to redesign that, I'll just be perfectly honest. I don't know that number. We're working to have DAG give us those numbers. But again, just that fundamental exercise should and probably will cost us dollars regularly to be trying to look for this A&E, but we're talking probably $400,000 to $500,000 potentially in changing this back to as before. Okay. When you look at the email that was out, I want to make sure too, talking about the savings, the potential of $5 to $6 million in savings, absolutely not even close. At very best, at this point, you probably are looking at, if you were working really, really hard, maybe you could pull back $1 million. Because finishes are just not that much. We did this exercise when we were looking for we spent almost 2.5 months prior to this bid being accepted, looking for every dollar we could save potentially on this project. And so we worked tirelessly on this project to find those savings. And we just couldn't find enough to bring to you guys respectfully. And that's why we got the vote that we got. But you can't cumulatively go back now and just say, the deduct, to Nevin's point, that we had in the initial bid.
Keith, can we pull that up in the share screen on this? I think it's important for them to see it. So,
but I just want to make sure that some of that is double dipping, and I don't want you guys to feel like we can do those things. Those savings just don't exist any longer. And so,
did I hear you say that we've already got DAG working on something else?
No, I'm just saying, there was a question asked to them to give us an estimate of what could be saved. And I think that's a risky question.
We spent money already on this project that may or may not go on, that idea may not go forward. My point, and you just said it, the legal fees, the cost to bring it back and then start over.
Yeah,
it's going to be a wash, is what I would say.
Well,
it costs us more money.
It may or may not be a wash, but what's really important to understand is there's things that we've already crossed that road to so many degrees. The 70% contracted, One of the big items, a $500,000 purchase item, is chairs for the Martin Theater. I think all of us would agree those are going to be pretty important to have. And so we didn't buy them yet simply because A, the lead time is not there yet, and B, the cost to store them, insure them, and make sure they're where they need to be and protected. It didn't make sense. It was around $80,000. It wasn't annually, but it was just for a year because we wouldn't order them for a while yet and store them. So I just, some of these items are just not realistic anymore.
So Keith, let me walk through these real quick because we've been talking about them. So if you look at the first top part, it says remove Ritz building, alternate number 8, 4.3 million. But then you look at shell upper floors only, that's alternate 2 and 3. Well, you have to have built the Ritz building structurally, foundationally, floors, and finished out and stubbed all your MEP and all of that out. And so you can't add 1.7 to 3.8 to 4.3. The scopes of those elements are different. And you'll notice the remove decorative elements, you see how small that number is, and then remove banquet seating. That is, so remove banquet seating is literally like round tables, chairs, etc. And then you'd remove your secondary elevators where your big savings is there. But like Keith said,
But that's too late.
it's too late. It's ordered. The pits are poured. It's the contractors have been contracted with. And so that's kind of where we're getting at is if you look at the project as a whole as it stands today, you'll see that your risk, while is still there for a potential change order, to the degree of expense, I don't know how much that could be, but the risk as we continue to move forward is continually decreasing, at least with the construction side of things, and not with the purchasing side of things for chairs and equipment as we continue to move forward. Could still be there, but there's only been one item thus far that we've been hit with a tariff, and I think it was a 9% on the elevator. So
Yep. All right. Mayor Branch has had his hand up for a while. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So just to kind of make sure, I'm going to repeat something to you that I think I understand. I just want to ensure that I fully understand. So change orders, we're talking about a couple different change order types. There are change orders that are related to, oh my gosh, we pulled this wall back. We had no idea the concrete was only 2 inches thick there, not 4. Yikes.
Correct.
Like conditions of the old building. And now that we've removed so much stuff, those are less and less surprises. A lot of the things we've purchased. So we've purchased all these things that are ready to come to us. Those changes should not, those costs should not change if we already agreed to them and they've already been executed contracts. So and then there are things that we have estimates on that might be affected by tariffs, but we don't really know what those might be yet. Am I understanding all that correctly?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
some bronze, for instance, some brass, some things of those natures. There could end up being some tariffs that are added to those, but it would not be reasonable to get it now, store it now. And some people, because it's an item that fluctuates in cost, so it could also come down for us. And so I'll be honest with you, this is a chess game, right? It's to some extent, I honestly, Jared and I made a conscious decision using the chairs. That's a perfect theater chairs. We made conscious decision to say, chances are probably pretty good that those go up $30,000, but there's a reasonable possibility of that. But is that worth taking that risk versus going ahead and knowing we could buy them today and commit and store them for $80,000 and insure them, make sure they're in air conditioned controlled climate and protect that number. We think it's worth the risk. Now we've worked really hard and we continue to work hard to commit them to say, hey, commit to us right now that they're not going to go up at all. And I feel like we're going to get them to that point because we do a lot of business with them. We do a lot of work with them. So I feel that they would want to do that because if it goes too high, we could also come back to them, but look, we're not going to buy that chair anymore. We're going to go back out on the market and look for chairs.
And so another point that goes in that decision is if we get products delivered early and they have to store for a period of time, well, by the time we get them installed, our warranty's gone. And so we're making the best, most prudent decisions we can. So anyway.
So going back to the options presented to us, option 2 looks like we fully fund the Martin Theater at $35.5 million. Is that correct?
Hang on, let me share my screen.
document, the presentation document on the screen.
Yep. Sorry, one
Yes,
second.
that is correct. That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
So what is the current budget for the Martin Theater?
32.9.
So in our meeting today, one of the problems we have is the spending limit of the city manager is at $25,000. That's a cumulative amount for the entire project, and we've already hit that. Correct?
Right. That's correct, because we're under the pre-hurricane purchasing policy.
Yep. And so we don't have a contingency amount where every project that I've been a part of, there's a fluctuation. You find things and things go up and down. This is normal. And there usually is a little bit set aside. And I mentioned in that, but we don't have that on this project. Option 2 potentially would give us that contingency fee, correct? Or contingency fund, correct?
It would for the FEMA funded scope of work, but unless the commission formally sets aside what we should, like if we would have awarded the job with a 10% contingency, then that would have been formally set aside where we wouldn't have to come back to you every time. But in this case, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And so I think what would be interesting would be in the next week or so to get a list of, we have a contingency. The option 2 potentially would give us that contingency fee, but there might be things that it doesn't cover, meaning, and give us those lists or give us lists of what it would and wouldn't cover so that we can see that. Because potentially it sounds like we might be under that situation sending money back to FEMA if we come under budget. Like FEMA doesn't let you keep the extra.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So then under option
Not
2.
in this scenario.
Okay.
There are scenarios where you can, but this particular scenario you cannot. That is correct.
And then under
Which scenario?
option 2.
Okay.
And option 2, the one on the screen, and option 2 also gives us a little bit of money, 4.3, actually no, closer to 5.1 million for the marina to be determined. And so we can keep potentially 5.1 on the marina. And the timeline, from what I understand, correct me, really it is determined by what we want to use that money for on the marina. Is that understanding correct?
Correct, sir. And Olivia, please jump in. But
Yeah.
my 50,000 foot explanation to Mayor Branch was, in order to use that money, we've got to write an alternate project. It's got to get designed. It goes for FEMA, review at the state. It goes up to FEMA. They do their review. It goes through EHP, and then it's obligated, and then we can start the project. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
I've voiced multiple times, a promenade around the marina. Basically, it's a sidewalk, railing. And then for me, option 2 is the most interesting one because it gives us a contingent fee. I don't quite understand what the contingent fee in the Martin could be used for. I'm asking for a list for that. And then 2, if we keep the 5.1 in the marina, I'd love to know what could be easily executed. Is it railings? Is it promenade? Is it engineering? Is it infrastructure? And to give us some examples of what those could be, because we have a pretty broad timeline of here of 28 to 56 months on the marina if we keep the money there, and that would potentially simplify any sort of deals we have on the marina, and also we're still keeping some of the money on the marina. Those are some of the values that I see. So,
All right, Commissioner Hughes, I see you put your hand up, sir.
Yes, sir. Mayor, I believe that 5.1 million is best served in the utilities being that being the main part of it, because without the utilities, you can't do anything on the upland, and those utilities also need to go to the docks for power and water. So it does have an immediate use if we were to put it over there, and while the upland won't happen for a while. The utilities allow the wetland to come alive pretty quick, because at the end of the day, we need to focus more on getting docks in than the upland, in my opinion, because we don't do an upland without docks. So I'm with you on the 5.1, but I would ask a question. You said that you've asked staff to come up with some ideas on the Martin. I guess where the the contingency, does that mean that we don't work, that they stop working while the staff is doing that?
If I could jump in, I think I interpreted that as the mayor asking what should we designate as items that could be used in a contingency, and then I kind of further took that to say if we had the additional monies, the $3 million or $3.5 million on the actual total on this page. If it was FEMA scope of work eligible and it was a contingency item, that we could use that as well if it was an acceptable item to the commission.
Yeah, basically the goalposts are no escalating costs. If we're able to pull back on things, that's good. If we're able to use the contingency, even better. But I don't want any general fund spending for the Martin Theater. That needs to be minimized to nothing. And I want to keep some marina money on the marina to simplify the deal with a partner there, and potentially get people fishing on the marina more conveniently, faster, and walking on the marina, those sort of things.
Mayor, we know we're going to have costs, and it's all reimbursable. So, unless that's why I asked earlier, is some of that not? So an escalating cost, I agree with, but if it's reimbursable, do you consider that an escalating cost when it's a net neutral?
Robbie, there is a local cost share on the Martin Theater.
Right, I know that, but are we going to increase that amount, or are we increasing the reimbursable amount? On these change orders.
So far, you've only increased the FEMA funded amount.
Okay.
The change order 1, change order 2, granted their request for change orders and it's still being validated, but there are some local cost share items in there. So we've explained to you and your colleagues with the walkthroughs is roughly 90 to 95% of the project is FEMA reimbursable, and you've got that $2 million of local cost share. We would expect to see that those percentages, when we march through these change orders, would follow that split. So, so that's what we're getting at. But as Mr. Branch said, the goal would be to minimize local cost share dollars. Period.
All right. Olivia has her hand back up, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Go ahead, Olivia.
Oh, I was just going to clarify. Are we talking about contingencies to use some of the 35 million at the marina? Was that the question?
No, ma'am. It's to set aside a contingency for the Martin Theater for federally funded items.
Is that what you meant, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'm basically wanting to avoid, if we went with option 2 and we get, as we progress through the Martin Theater, and we go, oh, that's actually not covered by the FEMA contingency fund that we have. And we're like, I didn't know that when we voted on option 2. And so I'm just wanting to make sure that option 2 encapsulates with the contingency fund for the Martin Theater, that it will cover the things that we're the most concerned about having rising costs on.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to get with Olivia to see if we can work that out. And then what that would mean is, if it does work, any potential local cost share change orders, regardless of how big, would still have to come before the commission. And we would, in my mind, we would fully brief you guys, say, is this something, 1, is it something the project has to have? And 2, what have we done to vet that it has to be there? And how have we driven down costs to get to this point? And then we can have those discussions. I do also want to mention that we have a tax savings agreement on this project. So we're doing owner direct purchase. And there'll be owner direct purchase contingency or savings money on the federally funded side, and there'll also be that on the locally funded side. So there will be wiggle room as it relates to the total contract value at closeout. So let's say we've saved, $450,000 on local cost share direct purchases. We can apply that towards potential. We can apply that at the end of the project to help everything balance too. So that does exist.
Yeah.
And then my other question was to Commissioner Hughes about the upland. Are you saying that the upland's in a wetland? No. I just heard
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
I just heard
I say
wetland,
wetland is the
and that
dock.
word scares me to death. Okay.
Yeah. Up and dock. How about that? Upland and docks. How about that? Is that better?
Okay. I was like, if there's a wetland, we can surely lock ourselves into about 18 months of environmental. But okay, I'm just gonna throw that out there. Okay, thank you.
So along with the money that if we went with option 2, and if the money 5.1 was put on the marina, I would again love to see potential. You're hearing lots of ways to use the money. What I'd like to see is a list of like, whoa, that idea, that's a 56-monther. And this idea, that's a 28-monther, kind of a thing. So that way we understand what path we're going down as elected officials.
Yep. All right. Commissioner Granger, I don't see you on the screen the way I have it set up, but I just want to give you an opportunity to speak up, sir. He might have dropped off. I don't know.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, sir. We can hear you now.
So Commissioner Street and Commissioner Lucas and I went through this back in September, 2 years ago, with the strategic priorities workshop, and some of these options were presented to us, and I think it was very clear then, just like it's very clear now, that if we're going to move this project forward, then we need all three buildings, because I don't want the city to manage this. I would much rather have a contract company manage this, and I think that we have spoken about this publicly, that that's for the direction that we want to go. So I don't support shelling the Ritz for that reason. I'll also point out, I think Mayor Branch, you pointed this out earlier, that this contract had no contingency tied to it. And most contracts that the city has a contingency tied to it. These would have already been approved upon the approval of the contract. I will concur that Keith Mefford's comments about the 10% is actually fairly low, given that it's a historical building. Historical buildings range wildly in cost overruns from 10% to 80%. So if we are staying at 10% at the end of this contract, then I think we are doing very, very well, considering that one of these buildings is a historical building. The other one is just completely gutted, and only the facade is historical. So I don't necessarily like changing anything in the middle of what we're doing, because we committed to this several times over. Given the fact that we need all three buildings to make it attractive to a vendor to run it properly, and give amazing programming to the citizens of Panama City. I can support some cost containment. I absolutely can support that. I absolutely can support kind of what you had mentioned earlier, Mayor Branch, which is, hey, maybe we don't need to finish it out completely. Maybe we just make it a functional building and then say, hey, here's your functional building, and put your own interior walls in, contractor. Maybe that's something to look at for just the Ritz. But I don't think that that's going to save us a lot of money. And then I have to look at, okay, if that does save us a lot of money, or any money for that matter, is that money that we're just going to hand it back over to FEMA? And so then if it is the case, then why not just finish the project? So that's just kind of my thoughts on it. I like option 2 because we voted over and over to fully fund the Martin, and that's still where I'm at. And by the Martin, I mean the entire project, Martin, Ritz, and Tennessee House. So I also agree with Commissioner Hughes that we have a partner that is willing and ready to work on our marina. So let's move that project forward. I personally would like to see residential in that area, because I think that would also inject a lot more people and foot traffic to downtown, which it's going to need. And I've said this publicly. Like, I'm not saying anything right now that I haven't already said. So that's where I'm at with it.
On the
Real quick, and we're doing downtown backwards. Most of the time you do residential and then the commercial comes. And so, but because the commercial was there, we need the residential. Not unlike Beck Avenue. What happened to Beck Avenue when Harbor Village showed up? Boom! And, everybody had 7 days a week. So I concur with you, Commissioner Granger, that having residential does a lot for the city. But what it does is it gives downtown a 7-day-a-week breath of air. All the people that are business owners down there have somebody down there to sell to. So I agree with you.
Commissioner Lucas, go ahead, Commissioner.
I still am firmly committed to the decision we made when we originally funded the Martin Theater project, and am not in favor of not completing it or leaving it to come back to it. As has been said, it will only cost more. And then going through the exercise of trying to cut costs and save costs now puts us at the risk of trading out savings for legal expenses. And again, draining the energy and the spirit that goes into this project. Burke Construction, I think, has been fabulous partners for the MLK Rec Center, as well as what they've done year to date with the Martin Theater. And I'm in favor of option 2, of giving us the wiggle room, if you will, the contingency, and let's keep going. As far as what to do with the monies on the uplands for the marina, if we can tweak out of that something that can be seen. I know infrastructure is very needed. It's going to be done anyway, but we also need something that we, the people, can see, touch, and feel, and know that things are happening toward redevelopment of the uplands as well.
If can I jump in for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Zimmerman.
Just a couple of things. Just listening to the comments, and I can give you a short update as it relates to the downtown marina. But it appears that option 2 provides a 10% more funding, which would allow for change orders. So the question is, we don't want more money just so we can get change orders. We just know and have heard that there might be more change orders in the making. So the question that the mayor asked was, well, give us an idea of what those are that might be coming, and also how much of those change orders are going to be FEMA funded, and will there be any? And the goal is there not be any that would be general fund funded, and because there's a portion of the project that is not eligible for FEMA. So I believe that that's interesting information that has been asked for tonight that would be useful in making the final decision on option 2, which would allow another little over $3 million that would be available to help out get the Martin Theater finished. Now, the other thing option 2 does is it provides approximately $5 million or so towards marina improvements. And I believe I heard that the request was, okay, well, what could those marina improvements be? Would they be infrastructure, water, sewer, electrical to take down to the marina? Would they be the hardscape, or would it be any parking, any streets, any railings, any promenades? What would those be to give us an idea of how they could be done? Because those would be FEMA projects. They would have to have an alternate site or alternate scope approved, and would go through an EHP process. The nice thing about marina improvements are that we're not ready to make those improvements until after the wet slips are pretty much finished. So timing wise, I think that works. So I think that's what I heard is, 1, give us some ideas about potential change orders on the Martin and whether or not they're FEMA funded. 2, how could $5.5 million or so of FEMA money be spent on the uplands downtown marina to assist that project? I do anticipate having a term sheet. I know CMP was listening tonight, and then they were going to submit a proposed term sheet tomorrow morning, and which will be attached to the agenda. So you will have an opportunity to look at it, but it will deal with things such as the conduit financing issue, which can be done, as we've already been told, and that primarily deals with the wet slips. It will have a proposal, I think, about uplands as far as what it would like to press forward on an Uplands proposal. And I believe that then those things will be in front of you this week for you to start looking at, and can be discussed at the meeting next week.
Let me see. So just so I know some rough numbers, just for I don't, I think the infrastructure, specifically the utilities needed. We already have water out there, and water's easy. It's more the electricity and the sewer that's a little bit more complex and a little bit more expensive out onto the TDOC. So, but I do know that the approximate cost for the promenade, and that includes the railing and the wider sidewalk and the lighting, that was about $2.5 million, 2.3 to 2.5. And then we know the boat ramp, just as an estimate, that was around a 1.8, maybe $2 million project to enhance and enlarge the boat ramp and do some of it. So those are just two estimates, on that end, just as we kind of think through what projects we might want to use that 5.1 million for. Commissioner Hughes, I see your hands is up, sir.
Yes, sir. When were those estimates done, and by who? Like for the boat ramp, do we know?
So the boat ramp estimates were done by Panhandle Engineering very recently. So those numbers are probably a little bit more solid than the promenade. That's a great question, Commissioner. Then the promenade estimate. The promenade estimate is at least a year ago, maybe more, maybe 18 months ago, and we have definitely seen cost come down over the last 6 to 8 to 9 months. So
right.
Maybe a little bit less, but I'd rather tell you it's 2.5 and it become 2 than tell you 2.5 and it become 3. So
okay, and with the water, yes, we have it at the TDOT, but I think with what we're talking about doing out there, I think that water line is probably going to have to be upgraded. It's just all going to be pulled up. Maybe to look at that, but what? Would we say we get it engineered and we get cost, and then we as a group, do we say, all right, we want to do the promenade and we want to do the utilities, and that's what we submit with the package to FEMA for the EHP? Is that right?
Yes, sir. What I would say is we need to probably get cost estimates on probably what I would call kind of the big three: the promenade, the utilities, the infrastructure, and then the boat ramp, and then give those to the commission, and then y'all deliberate and give staff direction. This is where we want to focus that $5.1 million, and then we take that. Now, obviously, I would want to double check with Olivia that those are eligible, but I think we've brought that up multiple times. Those would be eligible. We just have to take that to FEMA to initiate the scope change and then the EHP.
Okay, so with the boat ramp, I think you said that grant at the federal level is like $2 million, right? Is that right? For the boat ramp, it was $350 at the state level, and so the grant. Let's say that we're going to move money not to the boat ramp and to utilities, and then we don't get the boat ramp and we don't get the grant. So now we got a boat ramp problem. So, and that's something that's not going to happen until next year in terms of us knowing. Is that right, Jonathan?
That is correct. So we've already the boat ramp and the enhancement to that, and I just want to be clear that also includes the 50 or so boat trailer parkings. That's all fully designed, fully engineered, and we did not get the FWC grant at the state level, but they liked it so much because funds were limited. They liked it so much they encouraged us to submit it to the federal level. So that's been submitted to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And so, I mean, our chances are good. They're not 100%, but they're good. The FWC feels very good about it. But we won't know that probably till February or March. So,
right.
Yes, I would, given that, and we talked about it today, Commissioner, yes, the boat ramp needs some enhancement and needs some repairs. But it is still very functional. It's very functional. It's used every single day, multiple times. Right. So, if my resources are limited, which they are, I do think focusing on the promenade and the infrastructure that's needed out there is probably a wiser decision. And I could see us making that recommendation, but it would be once we updated the estimates and then had that deliberative process with you and your colleagues on the commission.
All right. Do we have to the $5 million? Do we have to do the work? Or if CMP was our partner, they're doing the work and we pay for $5 million of it. How does that work?
The procurement issue.
Yeah, there'd be a procurement issue. I'd have to defer to Nevin and Olivia on that.
Okay.
I believe would have to procure that according to federal standards.
Yeah, I would be, just the brief conversations I've had, I'd have to go into your procurement and double check it, but there could potentially be an issue with the procurement, the type of procurement that was done for that. So, but if everything is good and federally procured properly, then yeah, potentially that would be okay.
It would have to be bid out. So whoever the low bid is.
Roger that, Commissioner.
This has to do with the $5.5 million additional work that we're talking about, not the entire marina project, just this additional work. It would be a low bid situation.
Yeah. All right. Well, this will be back on the agenda. Just so you know, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, this is coming up on the agenda for next Tuesday, September 23rd. This is date certain from a motion that y'all made at the end of, I think it was August, the August 26th meeting. So, we'll see where we're at. Did you say you had something to add, Keith?
I just wanted to say one other thing before I forget, because I'll be departing this community, I guess. But one last thing I wanted to be sure and mention is the infrastructure for the electric. I only know this because I was working on the temporary electric service that we were trying to put out at the marina store for the gas that we were operating.
Oh, yeah.
So my work with FPL was they will probably at zero cost to the city provide the electrical supply to the T-Dock at no cost to us. It'll probably be a wash. They will provide that electric service out there. We will be responsible for, obviously, our MMPs for the slips, lighting and things like that. But they will put the big lift
the
of the transformers and all the power that we need at zero cost to us, most likely. Now, it hasn't been ran yet because they haven't seen the engineered drawings for that. So we can estimate what it would be for us to do it right now. But once we get those engineered drawings, we will be able to explain all the use, and most likely that'll be a zero cost to the city for that. So just keeping that in mind.
Yeah.
So.
And just for y'all's awareness, that would be like a transformer. It would obviously all be underground. We're not putting telephone poles and wires above. That's for the public's benefit too. This initial kind of sketch or mock-up was not, kind of close to the 9/11 memorial, but not on that little island that's a 9/11 memorial. It'd be on the southernmost tip of that large center spine area. There'd be a transformer on the ground right there. And then to Keith's point, kind of they could stub out from there. So, all right. Mr. Mayor, anything else? I don't know did we lose Mayor Branch?
I'm here. No, I'm shaking my head no.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. When we go like this, I only see like 4 of you on the right. So we'll stop sharing here.
You can just pin me to the top.
There you go. Oh, you're always pinned up top for me, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Anybody else for the good of the order? Like I said, this will be is this the final agenda item? I think it is. This will be the closing agenda item for our meeting next Tuesday, September 23rd. So,
and if you need me there, I promise I'll be on time.
One last thing. I did not ask my mom to email y'all. She, on her own, she did that and then phoned me and said I emailed all of the mayor and the commissioners. So she wanted to tell y'all something. So just wanted to get that on the record.
Yeah, I did forward it, and they did. I think some people didn't get it, Commissioner Hughes. I think some people did. So I think it was good. Better to get it twice than not at all. And obviously, your mom is more than entitled to her opinion as a resident of Panama.
That's right.
So, all right. Anything else, Mr. Mayor?
I'm good.
All right. Well, y'all have a great evening, and we appreciate it. We will see you Wednesday at a virtual workshop for the CRA at 4:30 p.m. talking about CRA issues for the year ahead.
Tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. 48 hours from now. So, all right, y'all take care.
Oh, bye.